Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Dawn's Dialogue for January. Thanks for joining us on this Friday. It's the Friday of a 3-day weekend, so nice to be able to launch into the weekend being together this morning. We would normally never have a Dawn's Dialogue on the Friday before a 3-day weekend, so a nice silver lining is the fact that no matter what your weekend looks like, which is probably just being at home because that's what we do these days, you can still join for a Dawn's Dialogue, and you could join in your comfy PJs with a cup of coffee. Although it is 10 o'clock, I don't know, maybe in a global pandemic, you just never get out of pajamas. I'm not entirely sure, but I'm glad that you're here with us today. We've got a full agenda for our Dawn's Dialogue. I'm going to go ahead and take over your screens here for 1 minute. And we, of course, have to start our Dawn's Dialogue with our Cohort meme of the month. Here it is. 2020 is finally over. That was the craziest year ever. And then 2021. But wait, there's more. This gave me a little bit of a laugh because I do think I had this mental setup that we're going to hit 2021 and we're going to start feeling this return to normalcy, but that's just not where we're at. And so we continue to roll with it and be flexible, use our grit and adaptability that we've all had to really own over the last year, and we're going from here. So there's your Cohort meme of the month. I would like to turn it over to, we have a special guest panelist with us today, and that is Mr. Randy Takahashi, because athletics, there's been a lot of information coming out about athletics in the last 24 hours even. I was just in a meeting this morning with Mr. Takahashi and the rest of our DAL League principals and athletic directors. So the information that you are about to see is like, there's I can't think of a time where it has been more accurate to say hot off the press. This is like coming into you from within the last like 12 hours worth of information. And so I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Takahashi, and we're going to give a little update on athletics, where we're at, what we can anticipate. And I know there were some few questions that got submitted as well about athletics. And so hopefully we can answer some of those as we go. So Mr. Takahashi, go ahead and take it away.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Bell. So what I want to do today is I want to cover two things. One, I want to cover athletics, and then I also want to cover sports camps, because one is getting ready to happen and one has been happening and will continue to happen. So yes, Mr. Bell is correct that in the literally in the last 24 hours, a lot of decisions were finalized as far as the beginning of athletics. And that's at the North Coast section level, also at the league level. In fact, we, Mr. Bell and I just got done with a great 90-minute meeting with the league, and a lot of headway was made. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over just what needs to be put out there right now. Some things we have not made definite plans on yet because we're not at that place, but the the North Coast section has decided we are going to start as early as February 1. And that will be what are considered the purple tier sports. Now, it was decided this morning in the league that we're going to start on February 1, possibly swimming and diving, track and field, boys and girls tennis, and boys and girls golf. Now, the one condition on that is we have to be out of the stay-at-home order. And so if we are out of the stay-at-home order, we're starting on February 1. If February 1, we are still in the stay-at-home order, we will not start sports until the stay-at-home order is lifted. The moment that happens, we're a go. So those sports, we will be working with the coaches to get ready to start. As I always tell the coaches, be ready to start on the first day that we have available, because if we have to adjust, we can, but we don't want to be unprepared. So we will be ready to start February 1, and hopefully the stay-at-home order is lifted. Now, a lot of that obviously depends on what our state and county guidelines have us as far as the stay-at-home. the tiers, etc. Now, as far as all the other sports, you will see, if you go to the North Coast Section website, you'll see that cross country, oh, there we go, thank you, is in the purple tier, but it was decided to move that back into the red tier because of the conflict with track and field. And we wanted track and field to go first because those students lost their season last spring. And so that was a priority. I'm sorry.
Can I jump in real quick? Because just to clarify on that, we didn't move cross country to the red tier, meaning we don't have to be in the red tier to hold a cross and country to hold a cross country season. But we determined as a DAL league, we can't run track and field and cross country at the same time. So we're running track and field first, and then we'll run cross country. I think what you're alluding to is our hope is by the time we've run our purple tier seasons, the hope is that we're in the red tier and we're able to run red, if not orange, or beyond afterwards as well. So so we can still run cross country even if we're in purple tier data with COVID.
That is correct. Yes, thank you very much. And the intent is cross country will begin right after spring break. And so track and field will run up to spring break. So you see the sports there. And what this means is that the sports may start when the purple tier sports may start when we are in purple out of the stay-at-home order. And then the red tier sports may start when we are in the red tier and orange and yellow, etc. Now, we don't have any hard dates for when that's going to be because it is very possible that the red tier, whenever that comes, we want to be ready to start that as soon as possible. So we didn't want to say, okay, the red tier sports are going to start on this date because we don't know when we're going to be in the red tier. Now, one of the things that I want to put out there, because I have been telling parents and students, we want to allow as much participation as possible. And one thing that I am going to correct that I said, because this came out in the guidelines from the CIF, the state, and the Department of Public Health, is that there is only participation in one sport at a time. So where we were hoping to be able to do multiple sports, we cannot. So for example, as far as athletics, a student athlete cannot participate in both golf and tennis because they're in the same tier season. Now, what that also means is that they cannot participate in a sport camp. So, for example, if we have a track and field athlete, they're in track and field only, so they cannot do a sport camp at the same time. So, for example, if we have the baseball sport camp going on, that would be considered participation in two different cohorts, and they can't do that at the same time. So that was, I wanted to correct myself because that is something that came out when the latest guidelines came out, that though I said that, that actually does not apply anymore. Now, questions that have come up, well, do we have to be in the hybrid in school to be able to do athletics? No, we do not. This is irregardless of our being in the hybrid or being in the distance learning. The question also came up, well, what if we are in the hybrid, but my student has opted to still be in distance learning? They still are eligible to participate, so that they can do. So we want to make sure everybody knows that whatever happens with the hybrid or no hybrid, whatever happens with your decision to be in the hybrid or stay or distance learning, you'll still be able to participate in athletics when we're able to open those up. And then let's see. Oh, so what I really want to impress upon people now is, if you have not done so, get the athletic clearance done now, especially if you're track and field, swimming and diving, boys and girls golf, boys and girls tennis. But also get that done now if you're a red tier sport, for example. Well, cross country is going to start right after spring break. Get that done now. And then even the other red tier sports, because we don't know when that's going to open up. Baseball, softball, girls lacrosse. Get those done now. Please get those done now. Now, somebody had asked, well, can we file for the extension? No, there is no extension. That was put in place by the CIF when they expected athletics to start on August 10, but there was a real issue with medical facilities being able to see a large group of students to be able to do their clearances. Well, since the seasons got pushed back, they have taken that off the table. So there no longer is an extension. You have to have the athletic clearance to be able to start a sport. Mr. Bell, anything else that you can think of that as far as athletics are concerned?
Yeah, well, I think there's been some great questions that have come in the chat that I'd love for you to address. Because I know we've talked about, some we necessarily haven't talked about. But there's a question about if someone decides to play in a purple tier sport because it's open and they want to play, but then we hit the red tier and we start a red tier sport season, can they leave their purple tier and then play in the red tier sport?
Great question. Yes, they will be allowed to do that. Once again, it's about participation. We want to be really flexible. We don't want to hardline anybody on this or that. So there is no overlap in the season, so they can't continue in that purple tier sport and then start the red tier sport. They would actually have to cease the purple tier sport without going back to it and then go to the red tier sport.
And then there was a question about, do we know when students would be allowed to play two sports? My understanding is that we have to be out of even the yellow before we're allowed to go into a multiple cohort.
That is correct. Yes, we would have to be completely out of the tiers to be able to do that. Now, keeping in mind that the Department of Public Health, let's say really great things happen, miraculous things happen, and the numbers are looking better and better, and we're flying towards orange tier, yellow tier. Now, the Department of Public Health can, with CIF, can change that to being able to do two cohorts. They have the ability to do that. Will that happen? I'm going to say let's assume it's not going to happen, but be really happy if it does.
Yeah, that would be great. I also saw a question that popped up around the time. I know there's a time cutoff for, football players and other fall athletes where you have to have essentially like a break time in between your last play time and a fall start time. And I would just say some of that hasn't really been determined. While yes, that is a current rule and standing that you have to end your football play before the football, for example, before April, if you want to play in the fall. We are having conversations on if there's a way in which we can waive that. And if so, what would that look like? So nothing has been determined yet, but at the moment, that is still a rule that's outlined by CIF, but we'll have to figure that out as we go. So I know that there are some questions about that. And as Mr. Takahashi said, there are still things that are just being considered and discussed. For example, no one has brought in spectators yet and what that's going to look like. We know we might require for like travel, like how are we getting students different places? So all of these sort of rules and considerations that that we have to consider and figure out. That's part of what the DAL is doing now. That's part of why Mr. Takahashi and I spent an hour and a half this morning before this meeting in the DAL meeting, and we've got 3 more scheduled over the course of the next 3 weeks to try to figure out some of these guidelines and rules, so that hopefully we can have some clarity before we hit that February 1st start date that we're all hoping we can hit and be out of the stay-at-home orders. So yeah, so I know that came up. I did want to include, you're seeing on the screen right now, I just wanted the accountability to, we really do take questions that are submitted in advance to Don's Dialogue. We really do look at those and we want to make sure they get answered. So I put in here, you can see these were the questions that came up. And I believe that they were all addressed. The only thing, Mr. Takahashi, that hasn't really been discussed is some off-season training activities for 9th graders to participate in, which really is more about the camps that are being offered. And I know you wanted to talk a little bit about camps as well. So can you talk about camps and what's going on there?
Absolutely, yes. And there was a question about girls soccer. Our intention is we want every sport to happen. From the top all the way down, CIF, North Coast section, they're our biggest advocates for getting sports happening. our district, our league, our athletic directors, our coaches, our administration, we all want sports to happen. So we're going to do everything we can to get every sport happening within the guidelines. So not just girls soccer, but everybody. Yeah, that is our goal. The sport camps. So we've been running the sport camps since June 8th. And that's the very first time we were able to start. And we've been able to do a lot of offerings that have been taken advantage by a lot of our student athletes, and it's been very positive. There was a time where things were looking better number wise. We were able to open things up, and then all of a sudden around the end of middle of November and December, then things just did not look good. And so we shut down for December, started back up on January 4. And so questions come up. Well, who's offering sport camps? Why are some sports not offering sport camps? Who gets priority? How do students get involved? So what I want to do is I want to give you that information because we are going to be allowed to run the sport camps through the entire school year without having to adhere to the normal NCS and CIF guidelines. So what we're putting in place, everything that we put in place is actually put in place by the district. And the way that's determined is the athletic directors meet with district administration, and we meet every other week, if not every week, to review our guidelines and figure out, okay, what do we need to adjust? What do we need to review? Now, we are not requiring any coaches. We're not saying it's mandatory for you to do a sport camp. So that's why some programs are and some are not. So it has nothing to do with what is being prioritized. It's really on what the coaches are ready to offer. And who can participate in that? Anybody can. And we have certain guidelines. For example, we have to have cohorts of 14 and 2, 14 participants and 2 coaches. Currently, you can only be in one cohort at a time. You cannot be in more than one. We were at a point where you could be in 2, but once again, the numbers, the infection numbers are poor, the ICU numbers are poor, and so we had to go back to 1. So hopefully as things start getting better, we'll be able to start opening those things up again. Now, as far as, scheduling, what I do is I create a schedule, I create a draft, and then I work with the coaches and I say, okay, what do you need? What do you want? Okay, this is how I can do this. This is the time I can put you. I have to juggle things such as how many cohorts a program needs. I need to juggle things like, well, I can't go at 3:30 because I can't get there that early. I have work. Okay, I get some coaches, I can't go in the last session because I work at 4 in the morning. All right, so these are all things that I have to sit down and take into consideration when I put everything together. It's so difficult because we want to provide for everybody. And so I've told the coaches, one coach said, well, you're not going to please everybody. And I said, no, you're right. In fact, I'm going to disappoint all of you in some way because you're not all going to get what you want, but I'm trying to provide as much as I can so that we get everybody participating and no one's excluded. Now, the one thing that is really difficult is that I don't know how you feel about School Loop and Canvas. Canvas is not ideal for communication. School Loop was much better at that, but we have what we have. And so
I'd like to state that that's an opinion, not a fact, for the
that is
official
true.
recording of this Don's dialogue.
Yes, thank you. Yes, that is my opinion. And so, what I do is I put an announcement in Canvas, but it goes to all of the students, but it only goes to the parents who are subscribed in Canvas. Whereas with School Loop, it went to all of the parents because they were already in the system, and then they would either see it or they wouldn't. So that is the drawback to that. Just a side note, if you're hearing complaints from parents at Las Lomas and Campo Lindo that they're getting my announcements, yeah, they are, because I apologize, but if we have a teacher that is both at Acalanes and Las Lomas, that announcement is going to that teacher's Canvas page. And so the Las Lomas, so I do label it Acalanes High School students only so that it's very clear that that's what's happening. Both the Canvas company and our district office have no way of correcting that. So that's the only way I can do that. So if you got people complaining, because I do, I try to explain that's the drawback, and I apologize for any inconvenience. So some of it tends to be word of mouth, but if you have any questions about what's going on, if you want to know what camps are offered, if you want to know how to get the coach's contact information document, any other information, please send me an email and I will send you any information that I have that you're going to need. This current camp session is going to end next Friday, and then we'll start a new camp session. They're 3 weeks in length, and the new camp session will start January 25. But you will start seeing from your coaches, if you're already in there, that you should contact me if you're interested in being in the camp. At some point next week, probably Tuesday or Wednesday, I'm going to send an announcement out across the entire student body. The next camps are starting on Monday, January 25. You should contact the coaches and let them know that you're interested. The one drawback is, and this is actually fact, not opinion, but I can't put attachments on my global announcement, whereas I could on School Loop. So what I do put in there is, if you need a certain document, send me an email. I put my email address on there. Please send me the email and I'll get you whatever information you need.
Okay.
So questions on the sports camps, Mr. Bell?
No, I think that that's great. We also got information about Canvas communication, so thanks for that. I do think we're always looking to have better and more efficient processes in our communication. So we'll continue to work with Mr. Takahashi on how do we clarify and get communication out to our parents and our student communities in an essential and that are essential and in a timely and effective manner. So we'll continue to work on that. I do want to address, I know there's a question that came up about the Let Them Play rally that I've received a handful of emails about, and I know that there's some flyers going around and information about that around. It's not a school-sponsored event. That's a community-organized event. It's happening. I think that people are parking in the school parking lot and gathering on the Pleasant Hill Road there. But again, it's not a school-organized event at all. We are encouraging people to make sure that they do adhere to the health and safety orders, wear masks, keep 6 feet apart, and make sure to be respectful and cognizant of where you are, just being on a busy street right there. So part of what we've done on our school end, though, however, is we do want to make sure that we don't have added people gathering, because we know the more people that you're around, the higher the risk is. So there was a question in the chat just about the camps for today. Any camp that kind of fell within a half hour of sort of that scheduled time frame, we asked to consider if they wanted to move, and all the coaches that were leading those camps did want to move during that time so that they weren't potentially either blocked in or adding to however large the group is that's gathering. So hopefully that answers and addresses that question. To people on the panel, any other questions that came in that Mr. Takahashi can address before, I know he's got a class he has to get to? Perfect. Okay.
No, I think that was a really very thorough.
Yep. Okay, great. Thank you. All right. Mr. Takahashi, I can demote you to an attendee, which is not, personal, or you can just leave.
Oh, no, that's okay. I've got my Algebra 1 students that are waiting in the waiting room right now.
Perfect.
They're a great group.
Yeah. Well, a huge thank you to Mr. Takahashi for all that he does. Thank you, Mr. Takahashi. We appreciate it. I know in a normal year, your job is, there is a lot that you take on, but then you add on a global pandemic, and it is exponential, the amount of work you've done to try to maintain and move forward with athletics. So a huge thank you, Mr. Takahashi. Appreciate it.
Oh, thank you very much to everybody.
Okay. I'm going to take over your screens again. And you know, it's been interesting because the information was so fresh that the slides were a little bit off on how we wanted to present and what information we wanted to share. But appreciate you tracking with us as we went. I would love to share on the agenda. Hopefully you saw there was some, we wanted to share out some information from the end of semester survey that the students took regarding cohorts and some school culture and climate information. For the sake of time, I'm going to fly through a lot of this information, and I'm only sharing really high-level overview and not getting into too much of the gritty details of the survey, but do want to share some of the takeaways as we've looked and analyzed the data that has come in. I'll start with some of that information, and then we'll end with some next steps of what's come from the cohort and interest survey feedback that students took. This was a survey that was administered Monday of finals week. That was Monday, December 14th. It was an optional survey, and we were really impressed that we got 608 students to respond when it's the Monday of finals week and optional for students to take this survey. You can see the class breakdown here. I also found it interesting that we had it was just a little over the number of 9th and 12th grade students that took the survey versus our sophomores and juniors. The survey was designed by our BERT committee members. Ms. Powers sits on that, as well as a teacher rep, and then our wellness coordinator and a counselor. Our district-wide TOSAs for equity and culture designed part of the survey, and then our wellness center staff across the district also designed aspects of the survey. The purpose of the survey was to get feedback and input on the cohorts, specifically on the equity lessons. There were 6 of them last semester that we had rolled out, as well as some insight into our overall culture and climate on our campus. And we wanted to use the survey to develop more cohort lessons for the second semester, of which we think those cohort times on Monday are a value add to our students in our campus. And we wanted to make sure we had student voice on that, on what they wanted to see, and ways that we can help support an inclusive environment for all students. So really high level, here's what was kind of revealed through the survey. First, there were kind of 4 issues that were like the top issues of what students reported as areas of struggle on their campus: academic pressure, anxiety, overuse of technology, and then disconnection or isolation. And then the student interest for cohorts, what they'd like to see moving forward for the spring semester was to add some intersection of additional equity concerns. So including LGBTQ plus concerns and classism, ableism, that sort of stuff that they had some interest in. They wanted to continue to focus on rapport and connection opportunities, discussions around mental health and way to stay centered. And then they also wanted information on current issues, including COVID and just like political happenings. I thought that was interesting, knowing what's happened post-survey last week, that students were engaged and wanting to continue to stay engaged in what was going on across our country and beyond. So I wanted to, again, I'm going to go very quickly through just some data points so that you can see, and then we'll talk about some next steps. And if there's an interest, we could even go deeper into some of the survey feedback in future Don's dialogues. The first few slides I just want to cover are information looking at the equity lessons and some of the student learnings. So this was about the compass. All of our students have been trained in the tools and protocols of having courageous conversations about race, or how to step into difficult conversations. We loved seeing this as a really high number, that a lot of students felt really comfortable talking about being able to explain the tools that they had been taught during these equity lessons. So anything, I mean, when you have, 65, 70% saying that they feel comfortable or even very comfortable, we think that that's really great. We also wanted to know if they had used it in any difficult conversations. And we also thought that this was really interesting that students responded that they are using these tools outside of just engaging in the cohort lessons. So again, another really great thing to see, that they're having conversations with their families and with their friends. So we know that there's a chunk there that aren't using it, and that's fine, but we love seeing that over half of our students are engaging in using these tools and protocols in different ways. This question was around increasing their own self-awareness and capacity to engage in sometimes difficult conversations. Again, it's a little bit of a bell curve there, but the fact that students are feeling that they've grown in their own capacity to engage is really important, and we'd love to see that number continue to increase as we go through our cohort lessons in the spring. And then this question was around mindful inquiry, which was the last equity lesson was really focused on listening to understand and how do you help walk someone through those conversations without inserting your own beliefs or opinions, but really just trying to seek to learn about someone else through mindful inquiry and how that can then impact your own self and keeping an open mind to engage, which is one of the tools that we teach in Courageous Conversations. Again, nice to see some high numbers there, and we want to continue to see those numbers grow. I know there's a lot on the screen. I don't expect you to read it all, and depending on what you're calling in on, it can be hard to even see what's on here. I just threw some quotes. Students had an opportunity to kind of share some input on the equity lessons and type it in. And I tried to capture like overall quotes that I think really encompassed what a lot of students were sharing when they shared some insight with us, and some that I just think are kind of funny. Like this is how what a student would share. A lot of students talked about like step in the right direction and it's necessary, and they appreciated having this time to engage. They appreciated the teachers engaging or their peers learning to engage. I loved some of these. There were quotes about, it's the third one down where a student wrote, they've opened my eyes to see them out in the world in different ways. And they also really appreciated that while they might have felt comfortable before, now knowing that their peers have these tools that they can engage in some of these conversations with their classmates. So we love seeing some of that. I thought some of the stuff that, it's always funny there's a lot of conversations around, I don't feel like enough of my classmates were involved in the conversation, or were choosing just to, or it was too quiet, or they wouldn't get a lot of engagement. It's the same 3 students talking every time. And we understand as educators and having been in the classroom that not only is it hard to overcome that in person, but it is on Zoom as well. So working with the teachers on what are some ways that you can draw out some more voices within your cohorts. I did throw in there, not everything was positive. There was a handful of comments about this hasn't been helpful. And so you can see on that last sentence there, most of the time students didn't talk because it was the easier thing to do, and some conversations about how hard some quotes about how hard it is to have these conversations over Zoom. So I do think this sort of encompasses the majority of the comments that we got from students, just be able to provide some comments. The next few slides are going to show just culture and climate responses that students had an opportunity to share about. This was students at Akalani's Get Along Well, Disagree to Strongly Agree. Again, a lot of really high numbers, which we like seeing. We want to continue to see those more students say that they agree or strongly agree, and engage with those students on the low end. It was anonymous, but how can we really start working to move that scale? Staff at Akalani's treat all students respectfully. Trying to get some insight on when they don't feel that they're being treated with respect, like what does that look like? So how can we move that 10% so that we get 4s and 5s? I look forward to coming to school in the morning. Again, we love that there's students who strongly agree that they look forward to coming to school in the morning, but what are the systems or practices that we can implement that might help all students feel like they enjoy coming to school in the morning? A couple questions about both Akalani's. The next one looks at the greater La Marinda community, but this was students' perception of if people of different cultural backgrounds get along well at Akalani's. And you'll notice that it's not quite as positive when you look at the greater La Marinda community. So how can we continue to engage on our campus and in our community to move that to be more positive? And then this was a question about showing up on an average day. How do they feel? You'll see there's a high number: anxious, worried, stressed, and then unhappy, sad, and depressed are areas that we want to target to help engage with those students, provide resources for those students. But we're also really glad to see that there's students marking satisfied and optimistic and happy on an average day. I know there's been a lot, especially on the parent DEI work around making sure that students know how to report when they see instances of bias or harassment or discrimination. And so this was a perception. We want to know if students felt that they and other students knew how to report, so that we can see where we need to maybe target and engage on sharing information about that and what that looks like. So you can see the data points there. And then in the table, you'll see this is just what I shared at the start in terms of some of the learnings. But what that means for us when we actually look at some of that data and start doing some reflection on that data is, one, we want to share with the students what they shared with us so that our school community can hear this is what students reported. We want students to know that we really do take those surveys seriously and what they have to say seriously, and that it impacts how we choose to engage. So we're going to share this data with the students at our next cohort, which is Monday, January 25th. They'll get to see some other sides of it too that we think might be more, that they might be more interested in than what our parents might be more interested in. So we'll share similar and then a little bit some different data as well. And then we want to build cohort lessons that reflect those interests and include student voice on those lessons, so that there's an engagement and an interest to continue attending. We want to remind students about the BERT system that's in place. We want to know that all students know how to report an instance of bias. I should also put on here and the difference between BERT and then the See Something, Say Something app. So that there's two sort of systems and ways to report areas of concern, but then areas of bias as well. Include club information and ways for students to connect, and then utilize and promote school resources such as our wellness center, peer tutoring, et cetera, that we really do have a lot to offer our students so that we can help see some of that information change for the positive as we continue to engage. So while yes, there is a lot of positive information there, we know that there's areas we have to step in and engage to. So I know, just trying to manage the two screens and present and share the information, I saw some things pop up that I'm assuming were some questions. What I'd like to do right now is maybe pause on those questions, because I see that we have our PE department chair here, Mr. Chris Clark. And he also has a class going on that I think he left to then come here and is possibly going back. So I'd love to give him the floor right now to talk about PE at Akalani's. And then I believe Mr. Mike Ivankovich will be jumping on right after him to share about athletic PE. And then we can come back and take any questions that that might be there. So Chris, I'm going to turn it over to you. And I have the bullet points that you shared. I'll bring them up right now.
Great. Good morning, everyone. For those that don't know, my name is Chris Clark, the department chair for the PE department here at Akalani's. I also teach sports medicine, and I'm also the school's athletic trainer. And so just wanted to bring you up to speed on the PE requirements for all students in the Akalani's district. There is a 2-year requirement for physical education within the district. Every student, every freshman must take the PE 9 curriculum. That is a must take for students. Normally within that curriculum, we will have a breadth of things that we will cover, including introductions to fitness parameters. Usually we would be getting ready for state physical fitness testing as part of the freshman PE curriculum. And then there would be a handful of traditional sports and recreational sports that students will participate in while we would be on campus. Unfortunately, that last portion of PE across the district and certainly across the state and even parts of the country have been significantly affected by COVID in our distance learning format. So unfortunately, our students are not getting what they would normally be getting given the circumstances. Unfortunately, we're not able to have enough equipment for kids to check out. So we couldn't send every freshman student home with a badminton racket so they could practice badminton strokes or things like that. It's just, it wouldn't be feasible to do that. So we have been in a mode where we are ultimately, for our freshman students, trying to promote as much fitness and as much physical, mental, and emotional health and wellness as we can, given that we're not able to provide the normal curriculum that we would normally provide in in-person instruction. After freshman year, students then have 3 years to complete their last year of PE requirement, that is the district requirement for graduation. There have been a handful of ways to do that. One of the ways is to take a PE elective. At Acalanes, we offer 2 elective courses. We offer yoga, Pilates, and fitness, and the other class would be a weight training class. If a student was an athlete and they participated in athletics, they would be able to get PE credit for participating in a season of a CIF sponsored sport that was offered at Acalanes. And I think Coach Ivankovich or Mr. Ivankovich is going to be explaining the athletic PE part of getting physical education credit for athletic participation. So those are the other 2 ways that you are allowed to go ahead and finalize your PE requirement within the district. Either sophomore, junior, or senior year, taking one of the PE electives, either weights or yoga, or using athletic PE as a way to satisfy that last PE requirement. Miss Bruce has been heading up our yoga courses within our department. Miss Bruce has had some yoga trainings. And again, as a department, I think we've all been trying to make sure that we're providing some sort of way for students to relieve stress, deal with some of the tumult that we're all kind of navigating through distance learning and specifically in PE. And we recognize that PE isn't the only class that these students have. And so one of the things we wanted to make sure that we were doing was not overburdening them with excessive amounts of work, knowing that their core academic curriculum is already difficult enough in a distance learning format. And we didn't want to be an extra sense of stress for our students as we have them in our PE classes. So those are the ways that you can go ahead and satisfy those PE requirements here in the district. The state of California has done away with, at least for now, has done away with the mandatory state physical fitness testing that all freshmen would normally participate in. Not only because we're in a pandemic, but also because the physical fitness testing, while preparing students for greater levels of fitness, it was a very high stakes test and didn't always reflect a student's abilities and wasn't necessarily the best indicator of someone's fitness. And so the state is looking at dropping it totally. We are not utilizing that for the last couple of years. And I don't think we're going to see state physical fitness testing back as part of the freshman curriculum requirement across the state. Now, that doesn't mean that when we get back on campus that we aren't going to be worried about or trying to teach our students how to improve the various components of fitness, whether it's increased cardiovascular fitness, increased flexibility, muscle strength or endurance. All of those things will always still be addressed as part of our curriculum. There just isn't a high stakes test associated with proving that you're able to do all of those things. And so that pretty much sums up our PE department here at Acalanes. Travis, will I be fielding any questions? I'm more than happy to answer any questions if anybody has any, or if we'll wait for Mike to deliver what he's going to deliver.
Yeah, I think I don't know that any questions came in, although my screen was I was screen sharing.
I see the Q&A here. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no questions directly about Chris's part right now. Sorry.
Okay.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Mr. Clark. Really appreciate all you do. And I know when we're not in a pandemic, you will always find Mr. Clark on the side of the field as our sports med teacher, working with those students, helping teach our students about sports health, safety, and then what to do with sports injuries. But also he's just there to support our student athletes. And so we appreciate all that you do, both with that and with our PE department. So thank you.
Thank you.
I believe that Mr. Ivankovich is in the room.
Hi.
Hi. I'm gonna go ahead. I'm slightly offended at the sweatshirt you're wearing for
Mike.
our Acalanes Dons dialogue, but I know you kind of have to straddle both campuses
How's
here.
that?
That's much better. So Mr. Ivankovich, he has been a longtime teacher at Acalanes, and over the past couple of years has had this split between Acalanes and Los Lomas High School, and is currently the coordinator and director of the athletic PE program. He oversees that program for both Acalanes and Los Lomas. So Mr. Ivankovich, I'm going to go ahead and I'll share a screen, but I'll turn the floor over to you.
Okay, thank you. So there we go. So, we've had some bumps in the road on athletic PE. When we had the lockdown in March, there were students who were planning to use this program to earn credit. They were not able to do so. Then we thought we'd be able to start sports sooner, and I don't know if you guys already talked about that, but the ball's kind of rolling on that, and it looks like maybe we'll be able to. But ultimately, as far as athletic PE goes right now this year, I don't know if director is the right title for me, but I'm a semi-assistant director maybe. But, Aida Glimmy is in charge of this program at the district level. And what she's doing right now is working on multiple different ideas for solutions, one of which is to have an independent athletic PE where requirements can be met to earn credit, but it's not completed yet. So, I can't really say exactly what it's going to look like and exactly who's going to be in there and exactly what the criteria will be, because it's super complicated, because, it's not just her. So she's working with Abby, and they're trying to build a course on Canvas where we have a way for students to be able to get enrolled in the first place, track and log their hours. And then there's going to have to be criteria based on need of how many students have to have it right now to kind of address all emergency situations slash kids going to run out of time. There's a limit to how many people will be able to participate. So this should be coming out hopefully next week. And I think the plan right now is that individual students will be contacted. Kids were supposed to sign up for athletic PE or state their intentions when they signed up for their schedule, so their counselors knew why they weren't fulfilling this requirement. So there's a lot of criteria that she's going to sort through to get that done. And then I guess the last part of it would be after this is complete and to whatever degree we are able to meet the needs of students in the district, there may be additional things that come down the road. If there's additional problems, there will be additional solutions. But we're kind of doing one thing at a time right now. Am I supposed to look at the chat and stuff?
No, you're good. We got people monitoring that.
Okay.
And not that we've had any questions that have come in addition to athletic PE, but I know it's a little bit of a moving target as we deal with stay-home orders and the allowances of how we can engage. But obviously, I hope it goes without saying that our commitment is to make sure all students get the credit that they need to graduate, and hence why we need some solutions with athletic PE for those students who are planning on that for credit, while also at the same time maintaining the integrity of our PE department, knowing that there's significant value in those PE classes as well. So Mr. Vankovich, I know that it's a lot to manage. I think last year you had over like 500 students between the two schools dealing with athletic PE and meeting requirements and getting them the credit that they need. And so that's a lot to take on, and we appreciate you continuing to do so. This is your third year, right? With athletic PE? I think so.
Third, I'm not, man.
Yeah, it goes.
It's either the third or the fourth.
Yeah, it goes quick.
It was the third or the fourth, but I mean, I would just say this, that, you know, there will be no student at the end when graduation comes who does not graduate as a result of the fact that there was some kind of complication and there was no solution offered to them. Hopefully it'll be the solution that they want, but there will be no one that is just left hanging and, you know, we have the pandemic and then, well, it just didn't work out and you're not going to graduate. Solutions will be made for kids, and what Aida's working on now is this program to try to kind of knock out as much as possible of the people who intended to do this. That's the goal.
Yeah. We did have a question about students in the spring of 2020, if they were enrolled in a spring sport for athletic PE, what happened with the credit there?
Well, you know, that was basically suspended at that point. So
yeah,
there were, you know, there was only a few weeks before we went on the lockdown, and then everything stopped, including the athletic PE. So there's still criteria. So there's no way of like, there was no way of waiving or somehow just giving, you know, made up credit. So unfortunately, you know, just like with the sports, that didn't occur. Now, there is one thing that so there was no credit earned in spring.
correct.
As far as sports starting now, the way this program will work is, you know, unless Aida tells me different, we are not, what's going to happen right now for the end of this school year will not be the same as what it was in these previous years. But if students are participating, like they're in cross country or track or football or whatever the sport is, and they're enrolled in this program, it will be independent So they can independently earn hours, or they can have a coach, or they can have a trainer, or if they're playing one of these sports and they're at school practicing, that will also count. Any hours will count for students who are enrolled.
Yeah, correct.
So.
Yeah, no, that's good. Thank you, Mr. Vukovic. And I think that that's the spring issue is why it speaks to the need to give priority to our juniors or any student where there's a concern of trying to get that credit. So we know there's a lot of flexibility that has to happen within athletic PE in order to get the credit that's needed for these students, and appreciate how you provide that for the students and your support of those students. So thank you.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Mr. Clark, I see that you're still on as well. To both Mr. Clark and Mr. Ivankovich, I will demote you. It's nothing personal, but just to an attendee. So you're welcome to stay on and see what the happenings are, or you can take off. All right.
Thanks.
Take care. Okay. We do have a handful of information still to go for this last half hour that we have. Specifically, we should be seeing our teacher on special assignment, Kathryn Walton, who focuses on culture and equity. She's going to be jumping on any minute, followed by our student member who, student leadership representative, who will share some updates about things going on at Akalani's. While we wait for that to happen, I want to go to some of the pre-submitted questions that have come in, so we can start answering some of those questions, and then we can jump back to those panelists when they arrive. So, Mr. Plant or any of the other panelists, you can just interrupt me while I'm talking when we get Ms. Walton or our student rep on. As I said, we do take the pre-submitted questions into account and want to make sure we try to build a Don's dialogue that addresses those questions, but also leave space for just additional questions that might come in. There was a question that came in about the fall return, and I know as a parent, I feel it myself. We have to register my TKer for kindergarten and what that looks like, and so there's all kinds of questions about what the fall might look like. We do hope that in the next week or two, we have updates on what the second tiered rollout of the vaccine will look like, knowing that teachers are considered one of the essential workers that need to get vaccinated as part of that 1B plan for the vaccine rollout, specifically in our county. So I don't have any information on the vaccine rollout for teachers and what that looks like. And there has not been conversation yet of what the fall is going to look like with where we're at with vaccines, because we haven't really seen an effective rollout of this vaccine process yet. And we're hoping that that starts getting some momentum and more people can get vaccinated. Even at the state level, there's conversations on who really classifies as a quote unquote teacher. Is that any person that works with a student on any campus in California? Is that just a teacher who teaches in the classroom? Are administrators, for example, included in that? What about some of our volunteer staff that comes in and works with our students? So who exactly fits in that category for vaccines still has to be determined. And then we have to start getting the vaccine and the rollout and move from there. The long and the short to this first question is, I think anything is still a possibility. My hope is that we can return full in the fall. That's the hope, and hopefully we continue to see we'll see our numbers decline, see us drop colors in COVID tiers, and we're able to return in the fall. But I just don't have an answer for what that will look like yet. And so I'm sorry, I can't be more specific in that answer. Using county numbers to determine whether it's okay to start hybrid model in the Lafayette School District. I'm assuming this question was meant for Lafayette schools, of which Akalani's school district is a part of. I can't say that I can speak with clarity to all of the determinations from our partner district, Lafayette School District, but for AUHSD, we are part of what came in the board discussion around when we can return is to not just look at the county numbers of being in red, but also looking at our local numbers of what that looks like and taking those into consideration. So I know we have a board member listening in. If she has a comment she'd like me to share with everyone, I'm happy to read that out. But it was part of the determination, being that we do have are part of a larger county, that we'd be in the red, but we'd also take into account the consideration of our local numbers as well. In terms of SAT and ACT exams at Acalanes, our district has never offered the ACT exam before. It's actually really interesting because it's an application for for a school to host and proctor the ACT exam, and we've applied numerous years and have actually never been allowed to run the ACT exam. There's lots of different considerations in that, including proximity of where other ACT exams are being offered. But we've never offered the ACT exam, and I know while we continue to try to apply every other year or so, we haven't been approved for that. However, with the SAT, at this time, I'm not entirely positive on what this a spring offering of the SAT will look like. It depends on the COVID numbers. We're hopeful we were able to run one in the fall, and we're hopeful that we're able to do another, that our numbers drop and that we can get enough volunteers to actually run an SAT. So
Travis, I could speak to that briefly if you'd like me to,
yeah,
because I supervise that. So we did just have to, there was a PSAT scheduled coming up on the 26th for sophomores. Obviously, with the stay-at-home order, we had to cancel that recently. What we're doing is keeping dates open on the calendar for potential SAT administrations, and then we just have to be patient and wait for the COVID data as those dates come closer. So right now, we do have something on the calendar for March, although it has not yet been decided exactly which campuses will hold an SAT at that administration. So I see that as a question mark for us. And then also there's some talk about adding a date in April, and there's another tentative day in May and even in June. So there are possible times that we can offer the SAT. As Mr. Bell said, we did offer it back in the fall when we were able to, with some success, although it was logistically it was quite a challenge. We were able to do it, and we were really happy to do so. And that is the district line on that is, as we are able to, we will offer those administrations. However, the last couple have had to have been cancelled because of the tier that we're currently in.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Bell.
No, thank you. And I see we have our student rep here. So even though it says Kathryn Walton, you're not Miss Walton. So we're going to go turn it over to Anna, who will be able to share with us. So let me share a screen, and then you can give us a report out.
Yes, thank you. She gave me her link.
Yeah, it's great.
That one might be the one from last time. Oh, just kidding. It's not. Okay. So a few events to look forward to. Today at lunch, the Student Support Board in the leadership class is holding a vision board info meeting kind of for 2021 to show you how to create your vision board and goals for this year. And then next week, January 22nd at lunch, they're going to hold another meeting where you can share out your vision boards and your goals. So if you have students, I would encourage them to go to that. It's going to be really cool. And then senior portraits are the week of January 25th to January 28th. I know I'm signed up for mine. So if you have seniors, make sure they're signed up for those. And then the virtual rally on January 25th at 5 p.m. It's going to be half live, half recorded. And the rallies board and tech board are working really hard on that. And it's going to be really cool. So watch that. I think it's a Wednesday at 5. And then just kind of a reminder, Frosh in-person study groups are the last week of each month. So for freshmen, they can come to school and meet with their teachers. And then there's a virtual open house on February 11th.
Can I jump in and do a few points of clarification and some questions?
Yeah.
Clarification one, the virtual rally that's partially live is not a live, like everyone gather and we're rallying for a rally. It is a live, we have some students who will be live streaming, and it'll be like live streaming with some pre-recorded videos, correct?
Yes.
Great. And then for senior portraits, we do offer them here on our campus that week. That's there January 25th through 28th. However, you can also schedule, if those dates don't work for you, or you want to schedule a studio session with Studio One. They have COVID compliant areas that they can do single portrait sessions as well. So do that if you would like. And then our open house course preview night is February 11th. You can expect more information coming out from me about specific information regarding the course selection process for next year coming in the February principals newsletter. So make sure you sign up for those communications and check our website for information on that. And then I'll go ahead and jump to the next slide.
Okay, and then just a few more events to look forward to. There's going to be the last week of January, a student and staff trivia week of Jeopardy. So it'll be teams of 4 with 1 staff member and 3 students who will be competing at lunch. And we're gonna roll that out next week. So that's gonna be exciting. And then February is Black History Month. There's gonna be lots of events. Like I said, the Jeopardy, there's going to be a poetry night, and then the streaming of Arshay Cooper's movie and a panel with him, which is going to be really cool. That is hosted by the Diversity Board and Leadership. So stay tuned for all those events. And then the Channel Kindness Book Club. There were 25 students who read Lady Gaga's book, Channel Kindness. And on January 28th at 5 p.m., there's going to be a virtual book club event with the publisher and various authors from the book, and anyone is invited to attend. So it's going to be really cool, and the book covers mental health, community outreach, and more. And then just a reminder, clubs meet weekly still, and the club spreadsheet with Zoom links and all the clubs on there is sent out weekly as well from Ms. Walton. So I would encourage people, your students, to attend. And if you want to start a new club for spring, they can. The application was sent out this week. And yeah, I think Club Day is coming soon. And then just a reminder, Zoom pronouns. You can see Ms. Walton has hers. I have mine too. But it's really important that you have your Zoom pronouns with your name. About 40% of students have opted in. And if your student hasn't already, please have the conversation to consider it.
Can I jump in on that really quick? I spoke to the local representative for, so I've been going in and updating all the Zoom pronouns. We're up to close to 600 profiles that I've changed, which has been labor intensive, but also really important. I spoke to the Zoom representative this week, and actually Zoom itself is adding a feature where people will be able to put their pronouns in alongside their names rather than me going in and adding them all. So they say their engineers are working on that, and it might even be out by the end of this month, which is really exciting.
Awesome. All right, well, thank you. And you're welcome to stick on and hang out, but I'm also going to turn it over to the real Miss Walton on the panelist call to do an update on some of the culture and equity work that's been happening. So Miss Walton, I'll share the screen and go from there.
Hi, good morning. I'm so happy to be here. So thanks for tuning in. If I haven't met you yet, I'm Kathryn Walton. I am the leadership teacher here, and I also teach ethnic studies this year. And then I get to do some culture and equity work. Thanks to LPI for building in this space for me. This is the second year that I've had the privilege of doing a lot of this work. So nice to be with you. I'm going to talk first through some school culture. When I say school culture, I really often think about, like, how do we get students to connect to people and connect to campus and connect to community? And one of the ways is just through cohort. And so a lot of the work that I've been doing alongside administration has been first semester cohorts, and now we're looking at second semester cohorts. I believe you got to see some of the survey results. And so some of that's in line with the equity work as well, but also just being really strategic about how do we build in time and space on Monday mornings for students to connect to their cohort teacher and each other as a way to feel connected to the school. We still have some work to do, absolutely. I think that we have some good plans for the months of February and March, and looking to do some grade level specific cohort topics in March, which I'm really excited about. And then the other thing is Just going with this theme of Akalani's Community Always, which hopefully you have heard about. And we have some really exciting plans that I am super fired up about for the end of January. The first one, we're going to have another drive-through day on January 28th. It's an Aka day, and your student can come by. We have some goodies for them, some awesome goodies that they will enjoy. We are going to celebrate seniors being done with college applications. We're going to have staff present to wave to. We're hoping to get some coaches there. Again, just providing that opportunity to connect even through a drive-through format. And then the other thing that I'm really excited about, we're trying to find ways to get people to just recognize that we are still here and we are still in our community. So we're doing Light Up Akalani's January 29th. We're going to run it Thursday through Sunday nights from 5 to 9, and it's just a light display. So I'm not going to tell you more, except for you will miss out if you at least don't drive by Akalani's once. So it's through those dates. And then the other thing is Ms. Powers and I have been rolling with a Women in Leadership series. And I just want to reiterate, I think the point of it is really to provide some space and time in the evenings to just be able to dialogue with some killer women in our city, in our state. And actually in February, we're bringing someone in from Georgia, just to think about like, what is the role of women leaders? How do women navigate that? What are some challenges that come up? The last one was with the Contra Costa deputy attorney, and she talked about like coming into that role with a lot of men and how she sort of navigated that to ultimately be in the role that she is today. So really powerful. My husband tunes in each time because I also think it's important for him to be able to listen. He is a supervisor of females. So I think that that's important. And I always really like seeing moms, daughters, dads, daughters. So anyone is welcome. January 26th, we're going to talk with a young person who has started her own art studio, and she's doing a lot of great work around systems of oppression and equity. And then in February, we're going to dialogue with Elizabeth Brown, who lives in Georgia. She's a Black female who is leading a high school program there around jobs and college, and I'm really excited for that dialogue. And then our Aka Chat Live for January is January 26th. It's a little bit different. It's a little bit more informal than Don's Dialogue. It's with Ms. Powers and I. And January 26th, we're going to also have some student guests on. So it's going to be a lot of student voice about their experience so far this year, about Black History Month, which is coming. So please tune in, bring your coffee, maybe your dog. And we're going to just continue the work together. Travis, you can jump to the equity slide. This is kind of the other hat that I wear, and I think a really important one. And so I just wanted to outline a few things that we have been working on. First is we are going to continue our equity cohort sessions in second semester. So we're dedicated to having 4. The first 2 will be during the month of February. And to design those, we're working with student leaders across the district to really think about what are the most important topics. We've also worked with our QSA and going to do a session in March, which I think is really important. The other thing, and I just came out of a meeting this morning, we had a district-wide equity meeting this morning. 71 people were on the call. It was so amazing. Students dialogued about a whole host of topics in breakout rooms, from our Black student unions to Asian student unions to curriculum to processing current events. Just a lot of really great dialogue, along with some action steps that students can take to continue the equity work, both at Akalani's and across the district. So the next one's February 19th. If your student wants to attend, they'll get reminders in Canvas from me. If you have yet to see the equity documentary series that we have done, we did one with our Black Student Union, we did one with our Queer Straight Alliance, and this month is our Asian American Student Union. It's on the Akalani's Leadership YouTube page. They are powerful narratives, and I really want to encourage you to watch them. It is student truth at its finest. If you need the link, email me and I will send them to you. And then lastly, I just want to make sure you have a save the date about Black History Month. It's coming up. We have a great committee that's working to put together a lot of plans, and I've just listed out some of the highlights. One of the things that I'll highlight is The Night with Arshay Cooper. If you have heard of the film or seen A Most Beautiful Thing, it's based on his memoir. He was a rower out of Chicago, and you can watch the movie. You can also read the book. And he's going to spend an evening with us February 23rd talking about his truth, his story. It'll stem anything from being an athlete to being a Black male, to his experience with police, to his experience living in Chicago, to what he's doing now. We're also going to take a look at like videography so that performing arts comes into play. And it's going to be facilitated mainly by student leaders, which I just think is so powerful. 6:30, February 23rd. You'll see the sign up come out Sunday in the parent newsletter. Please calendar that. We will push out an entire calendar of the month. And I guess here would be my challenge to you as a parent or guardian. Please encourage your student to opt in to at least one thing. I think that this dialogue is so important. And I really, really, really think that we need to make a commitment to students showing up. And you can help with that by being aware of what's going on and then talking about it in the morning or at the dinner table and really asking that they attend at least one. So stay tuned for more. I'm always here to answer questions, get feedback. Really appreciative of those of you who I work with and having the time and space to do this work. I think it's really important.
Awesome. Thank you, Ms. Walton. As always, very impressive work. Appreciate your time, dedication, commitment to our school community, and the greater Loma Linda community as well. So appreciate you. Any questions for Ms. Walton before we let her go? We're all good?
There were not any questions in the Q&A or the chat, no.
Awesome.
Great job, Kathryn.
Great.
Thanks, y'all. Have a great one.
See you later. Okay, we are, that's everything. We actually got to everything on our agenda. There was one last question that was a pre-submitted question, really focusing on this idea of how are we identifying, the question reads, I'm wondering if we're missing out on bringing back to campus a large group of quote average students who are likely struggling quite a bit from social isolation and lack of motivation. And I think the answer to that is yes, we're always trying to look at how can we identify students that need some of that engagement and then bring them back on campus. That was a lot of our work leading up to the end of last semester as we rolled out small groups. What are ways that we can engage and get students on our campus to engage in those smaller groups, and then continuing to try and promote ways that cohorts can engage, whether that's through our sports camps or these on-campus in-person groups. We're aware, like it's an issue. I think that is one of the biggest reasons why we want to encourage everyone to do their part to get our numbers down so that we can get our students back on campus in a hybrid learning. I know we haven't addressed hybrid learning on here at all, but my last newsletter that came out in January did outline where students and parents can identify the student group that they've been assigned for in-person learning, should they have made that selection to come for in-person learning. And we spent our last Dawn's Dialogue really going over the schedule and what that looks like for when we can return in person, which will be once we're in the red tier with our COVID data, which hopefully we see us starting to make a turn and approach that data in the near future. So that would be the goal, to get our students back on campus. We're always up. If you feel like your student is one of those students who feels isolated, trying to connect, we would love to hear from you, and then maybe brainstorm ways that we can provide some connection opportunities. Even as small as peer tutoring, which is a currently underutilized service that has so much value, from just even being able to work in smaller study groups on content that has to be studied and reviewed and learned anyways, to wellness groups that happen at least every other week, if not weekly, on different ways that you can come in for a lunchtime, eat your lunch on Zoom, but engage and connect with other students, to even our in-person small group work that I know many teachers are offering to help support the academic achievement of our students on campus. We're allowed to continue with that even in a stay-home order. So we have continued to run small groups. And we'd love to hear from you if that's something that we can help find ways for your students to connect and engage. So before we sign off here, are there any last minute questions that have come in? I'm looking to the other panelists here that we should address.
No, but I think Mr. Plant might have put in the chat, but maybe just to panelists, that if anybody's interested in which I already know the information, but Mike or Mr. Plant, can you tell them where to go?
Yes, absolutely. I did get a couple of inquiries about people very generously asking to help, if they could help proctor the SAT. And the answer is yes, we do anticipate, because we'll probably have to do it in small groups rather than a big, 100 kids in the gym. We would need proctoring help. So if you are interested in that, please email Miss Hannah Welling, hwelling@auhsdschools.org, as she oversees our testing. And I'll put that message in the chat right now also.
Great. Again, check our website and look for more information about our open house course preview session that's happening February 11th. And then more information will be rolling out in the next couple of weeks about our course selection process for the 21-22 school year. And then continue to check our website and read the daily bulletin and updates about all the event happenings, including Black History Month events that we're excited to celebrate together. So thank you, everyone. Have a great Friday. And as always, go Dons.